4 modes of action for the best pesticide spray rotation program, all on this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek Podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek Podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business. Welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez. So glad you're here. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We had a quiet Thanksgiving with our family and friends, and it was really nice to share and be with people you don't see all the time. Hope you're having a great one. It's getting really cold up in the Northeast, and we're getting chilly down here. We're probably in a blistering 71, 72 degrees here. At night it's going down into probably the high 60s. Really nice. It's like getting free air conditioning for a little while. Really enjoying this kind of weather. No rain. It doesn't rain every day. We just had some this morning, but not too bad. So I'm just really, really happy. I love this time of year. I just used to remind me of when I used to live up in Columbus, and I used to live up in Ohio. And I was able to go and take a drive through the rolling hills, and then see all the leaves drop, in the countryside, and, just change color. And it was just a beautiful time of year. It reminds me of that. We don't get any of that here in South Florida. We get trees that just lose their leaves, and then you just have to clean them up, but nothing changes color. It's just like, everything is almost evergreen. So I kind of miss that. But, hey, I'm looking to see if I can take a little road trip and go through the country and maybe see some snow, this year, hopefully, to go and take the wife to go see some snow. She's actually never seen snow in her life. It's amazing. So we're planning on that. But hope you're having a great time. You're having a great Monday. So glad you're here. We're going to be talking about modes of action and how to get the best spray rotation program for all of you out there that have to do perimeter spray treatment on every job. How to rotate it so you don't get resistance and you get better control. We're going to be discussing all the products that we can use for that on the podcast. But before that, I wanted to thank some people for listening, for sharing, for being on the podcast. Thank you so much to Bu Morley, who likes the Pest Geek Podcast on Facebook, and also Exterminators Pest at EXT Pest on Twitter, following us on Twitter. Thank you so much for that. We really do appreciate all the likes, the shares, the reviews, the 5 stars. Remember, no matter where you're at, where you're listening to us, if it's on iTunes, if it's on Podcast Addict, or any other app that you find, hey, give us a review, give us some stars. Let us know how we're doing. We greatly appreciate it. If you want to talk to us, you want to give us a call, you want to get in contact with us, you can always use the phone line 707-395-7378. Leave a recorded message, and we can use it. Your question or comments on the air on the podcast, we will. We're so grateful for that, for those who call in. Speaking of call-ins, we've got a call-in this week from a listener who listens to the podcast on a regular basis. Called in before, Adam Hall, and he called in to discuss a comment I made on the last podcast. And take a listen to his comment. This was based on hiring people and the kind of people that you get with different generations. And he had a very interesting take on that. I want you to listen. Take a look.
Mr. Frank Hernandez, this is Adam Hall in Panama City Beach. I just listened to your recent podcast twice just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I only had one comment for you. I figured I would call instead of message you. Being a millennial, you said something in there that really stood out, and I just wanted to give you my 2 cents on it. I believe for the millennials and somewhat Generation X, the reason we have the sentiment that we do is that we watched the baby boomer generation, and before them, the Korean War silent generation, and before them, the greatest generation, we watch these generations and what they went through, and if they could stay at a job for 20 or 30 years and have a pension and a retirement, and we kind of understood what it was like to go to work for the power company or the textile factory or be a receptionist at the dentist office. But nowadays, we don't know how long things are going to last, and we know that people can be somewhat deceiving. And so a millennial is really quick to job jump, because if we don't feel like there's any promise, or someone's not being 100% transparent or a little bit deceptive, the downside risk is too great to stay there for 4 or 5 years and hope that a leopard can change its spots. So I just wanted to give you my 2 cents. I hope you're doing great. Amazing podcast, and keep up the great work. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go. From a millennial calling in who listens to the podcast. I've had conversations with him about some plans, things he was planning to do and stuff like that. And I can understand. I as a Generation X, I'm one of those guys that I'll stick things out and see how it goes. But if I'm talking and talking and talking and nothing's happening, man, I'm one of those guys that I'm just going to let you know things about 2 or 3 times. And after that, I see no change and no interest to change. I'm going to move on, because you're wasting my time. I think my time is valuable as a person, to keep people, string them along in jobs where you're not going to really get to anything. And I think he nailed it. I think he nailed the sentiment. They're a lot quicker to move, from job to job, spend 2-3 years at a job, or, maybe a year. And if it's just not, you told them that they were going to do great, and you told them they were going to make this, and you told them you were going to do this and that, and they just observing all the time, and they don't see it. They're going to just go, and that's the way it is. A lot of people make a lot of promises, but at the end of the day, you just don't deliver, and they're not going to stick around. So I think it's a valid point. I'm doing a survey right now on Facebook on about 5 or 6 different sites about compensation and what people, as a tech, what do they want? And believe it or not, people would rather have hourly with insurance and some bonuses than straight commission. Even though you get a lot of people who are fanatical about straight commission, but those are the guys like me, that, are hustlers and go-getters, and, we just don't want to be limited by anything. Most people want some stability and some security. And so I think with the laws and the way the laws are going and things are, the way you compensate technicians is going to have to be in line with every other industry that is serviced. So I think he made a great point. Thank you for calling in and sharing. Again, if you want to call in and share, 707-395-7378 is the number. I often thought about doing a live call-in show on this, but trying to get it scheduled is going to be hard, and getting the lines in here to hook it up, to take all the calls and things like that, and try to do something like that. I thought it'd be pretty neat. I'm looking into that to see if we can do it, schedule a time where we're going to be on the air recording, and we can have a conversation recorded, and you just like a regular call-in show. It'd be neat. But if you want to reach us, also on by email, questions@pestgeekpodcast.com. Check us out there on the web at pestgeekpodcast.com. Join the society. The membership section is now open. You can go to that membership section and you can get content that is only available to members. So join us. It's free. We won't spam your inbox. As a matter of fact, I haven't even sent out a single email to anybody in 2 years, other than when somebody writes me and asks me a question. It's just not something I enjoy doing all the time, is spamming people's email, or sharing their information. So, we don't share our sources or information unless we have permission to do so. So join us. We're looking at doing some really neat things, and we really want your support on that. A book that is awesome. I've been meaning to share this book, and I just keep forgetting. And it's called Free: The Future of Radical Price, by Chris Anderson. It's a great book, and also the price on this book is free. You can download this book for free on Audible. We're going to have a link to that on the podcast, so you can just go to the website and get that book. It's free. It's a great book on how free is, and it's mostly focused on the industry of tech, software downloads and things like that, where you can do things for free, where it's virtually almost free to share it. So, go get the book. It's free, but it has some great insights on how and what the attitudes is with some people thinking that, they should be able to get some things for free, in this business where, we are a labor intensive business. It requires people with knowledge physically at a location. We can't, multitask like software. But it does give you a little insight on the mentality of where it's going and why that's so important. Again, with what I'm talking about with sharing the conference that they recorded Pest World, that you put it online and it's virtually almost free for you, versus duplicating CDs and needing a duplication machine and, 60 something CDs. You can just put it on iTunes, sell it for 99 cents a download, like music, and you can probably make more money off of that than you do at the conference selling and trying to sell CDs, and maybe only sell a dozen of those. So, again, reach out to the the Pest Management Association, the National Pest Management Association. Hey, put it on iTunes. Put this stuff that you're recording, these conferences, put them on iTunes. Let people buy them. It's for me to have to travel somewhere. I mean, we're making plans now to travel to the event in the Pest Management Association Business and Operations Expo. By the way, guys, it's really a good conference to go to. They lowered the price on both people attending and also for vendors that want to attend. It's been dropped dramatically. The entire full event, which includes gala dinners and a whole bunch of things for 3 days, is $400. Now, the educational only, it's $150. It's going to be at a great resort at the Hilton Orlando Lake Buena Vista at Walt Disney World Resort. And it's going to be January 12th, Thursday the 12th through Saturday the 14th. So it's 2 days. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And, but we're planning to be there on Friday and Saturday. So hit us up if you want to hang out and grab some dinner or lunch or something during the event. We'll be there. I'm also going to be out on the field, interviewing vendors, and I'm hoping to have some really neat content for you guys, to listen to when I get back from that conference. There was a great conference also in Paris called Parasitech. This conference was held in Paris, November 16th through the 18th. It attracted some 3,000 attendees, and this was over at the Paris Event Center near Porte de la Villette. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. If you speak French, let me know how I did on that. It's the edition of the Florida Pest Management equivalent over there in Paris, and this went on for 2 days. And so that was pretty cool. There's a link to it. You want to know what they talked about? I'll have a link to that event on the show notes. And I was looking through the products that, they're available around the world and things like that. I'm just curious about what other people are doing in other countries. And I came across this product made by Bayer. I think it's exclusively sold in the UK or in Europe, and it's called Racumin or Racumin. It's Racumin. It's an anticoagulant contact insecticide foam for indoor use against rats and mice. Now, I saw that and immediately I said, my God, if people get a hold of that here in the U.S. and they actually try to use it, how many poisonings will we have with children touching the foam and playing with the foam or, getting in contact with it because it was applied wrong? I just thought about all the scenarios that could go wrong with that. And it's got a signal word of danger, and it is flammable. It has butane in it, I guess, as a propellant. The active ingredient is calmetrallyl. It's a really, it's 0.4%. And I got a link to it. Check it out, because I thought it was like really neat idea, but I said, man, wow, all the things I just see rodenticide poured everywhere here in the U.S. People throw it out in the yard. People throw it in the attic with no rodent cases. I see it, and I'm like, I cringe. at that thought. But, check out the link. I thought it was really, 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 really cool. Getting to what we don't want to talk about. By the way, check out this amazing fact. We think about acute toxicity and a chronic toxicity, but we never think about deliberate self-poisoning. And I found this article reading through the material I was reading, and they made a comment about how poisoning with insecticide is a common issue globally. More than 300,000 deaths a year occur around the world. People committing suicide with pesticides, intentionally self-poisoning themselves. I got the article it's called The Global Distribution of Fatal Pesticide Self-Poisoning Systemic Review at the National, I think it's the National Institute of Health, NIH. I got a link to it. You can check that out. I thought that was a disturbing, but, interesting fact. People poisoning themselves intentionally. And there's more of that goes on. As far as self-poisoning, then actually people do get acute toxicity from applying pesticides. But we're going to be talking about 4 modes of action that you can use for the best pesticide spray rotation program. I get a lot of actually questions on that. I get people emailing me and the conversation comes up. It says, we're just using one product. And man, we heard the podcast that you did on rotating chemicals correctly by mode of action. And they got motivated by that, and they're changing it up and doing new things. And I'm really grateful for that they understand it. But I didn't give a lot of details on what you can do and how you can use it and how these products work. And I thought I'd get into something that I people have been asking me for, to get into more products and how they work and the modes of action and things like that. And I decided to go ahead and do that. And all of these that we're talking about are basically neurotoxins. And they work on the cellular level, in the neurons in different parts. And it's very, looking at a nerve ending and looking at all the connections to those nerves of an insect. It's really complex, but what I hope to do is just basically simplify how the actual pesticide works. And why, I don't know exactly how in a lot of insects you get a resistance, but like for instance, bed bugs have a habit of thickening their cuticle, making that cuticle thicker over time, and it makes them resistant to a lot of pesticides being able to penetrate that exoskeleton, which it's made out of chitin. And why, and when we wonder why chitin inhibitors and things like that for bed bugs don't work real well, but the pesticides all work on the neurons and the cells on the cell level where things happen to control these pests. And one of the ones that we're going to start out with, we're going to go in order by class. So we're going to be talking about 4 different classes. And these classes, I'm going to put a link to where you can know all about all the 29 classes of insecticide, but they're more used in industrial applications and in agricultural applications. A lot of these products cannot be used in residential or commercial applications, especially when you start getting into food service. More and more products are being limited to crack and crevice and spot treatment versus full-blown surface sprays and area sprays and baseboard sprays. Pretty soon baseboard sprays are going to be a thing of the past because of the way these chemicals work. A lot of these chemicals have reduced risk, even though they're because of the way they're applied, they're considered a reduced risk product. I mean, you wouldn't want to baseboard spray a lot of these products. But in the case of fipronil, Termidor, a lot of people are using it, and you're limited to twice a year. Now you can use it up to, every quarter, but do you really want to get into that pattern where you basically now start using Termidor every quarter exclusively because you're able to do it at a reduced rate? I don't think that's wise. I think that's actually kind of foolish. And, when you have one tech, it's very easy to train on multiple labels. I understand the complexity of that. When you have 10 techs to try to train 10 techs on 4 different labels, it becomes a little bit more challenging because of the restrictions. So people stick with one product that they give their techs, or they buy the cheapest product that's on sale that month to treat. And I don't think that that's, how you should run a pest control business, but I'm going to give you options. And that way you can have, because realistically is that there are some accounts that are strictly going to be spray, and that's all you're going to do because of the price, or, you're doing shopping centers and malls and things like that on the outside where you have enormous amount of square feet to treat, and preventing and getting into a lot of the things that we do for residential gets cost prohibitive. I mean, when we're talking about doing granular applications or bait applications outside, can you really put a bait application around, you got a mall that might have, 20,000 feet around it of exterior perimeter. Are you going to put a product, a granular product around, 20,000 feet of concrete or asphalt, where everybody's touching it? Probably not. So there are applications, there are ways to do things, and give you different ideas of what we could do. But I got a lot of links on fipronil, including, issues with potential problems with certain cancers, where fipronil in mice, especially in the thyroid, it does get some tumors. So you want to check that out as part. You want to be informed about the chemicals you're applying. The one that's the most risk is not the people in a mall, people in a house or in an apartment building, but people who are constantly working with it, transporting it, handling, applying it, mixing it. You need to really know what you're using and why you're using it, and what long-term effect could that have on you. And if you're using that every single day, and that's going to be your number one product that you turn to, and you're applying it every single day, you're exposed to it every single day, what is that long-term, not the acute toxicity, but the long-term exposure and the toxicity to that? And that's where most people don't talk about. I find that very few people actually talk about that. I will talk a lot about it because, you're exposed to it. And I don't want you to, run around for years not knowing what you were handling, how you were handling it, and why you're having problems. But the way fipronil works, there's two ways most of these products work. They either work as a blocker or they work as an inhibitor. But one of them, a blocker, will keep a channel closed. The other one will open up the channel. They work on channels different. If you look at the neuron level in the cellular, where things need to fire, the way it works is it either lets something in or blocks something from coming in through what are known as channels that open up to allow these chemicals that are whether it's sodium, whether it's potassium, whether it's GABA, all of these either inhibit it from coming in, prohibit it from coming in, or allow it to flood the system with it, which in either case creates an imbalance in that, whether either you get rapid firing or you get no firing at all of those neurons, and causing death to the insect. That's how they work. So this one, it blocks the G amino butyric acid, the GABA, in a regulated chloride channel in neurons. That's how it works. Big word, big fancy words, but what it does is GABA is one of those chemicals that bring calmness and things, and even in people. And so what this does is it actually blocks the GABA-gated chlorine and reducing normal neuron inhibition, which leads to hyperexcitation of the central nervous system, convulsions, and death. Most of the time, whether one happens or the other happens, that tends to be the case. So in a case like you can take your fipronil and do 2 applications a year. So if you're doing a quarterly service, you really need only 2 to 3. If you're doing it more often, you're doing a bi-monthly service, maybe you want to look at 4 products that you incorporate in your rotation. Okay, so the next category is the most popular of all, which is a class 3. These are your pyrethrins and your pyrethrums. And pyrethrins are natural. Pyrethrins are synthetic. Even though they have a carbon compound in it, they're not considered organic because they do have that carbon compound. But they're synthetic form of the pyrethrin. And there's basically two groups. Most people don't realize that there's two groups of pyrethroids, not the pyrethrum, but actually pyrethroids. Type 1 pyrethroids are your permethrins, your bifenthrin. These don't have the cyano component to them, and it makes it a little different. It works in the same way in the mode of action of opening up and blocking that gate to where the sodium channel is to keep it open, and then allowing the system to flood with sodium and then flush out and then like flood with maybe potassium. And it does all this, and then it just causes this rush, and basically there's a traffic jam because of all the sodium positive ions that are in the cell. So that's how they work to kill the insect. But there's two types. You have the type 1 and type 2. The type 2 pyrethroid is your cypermethrin, your cyfluthrin, your deltamethrin, your products like Cyper, Sidekick CS, Tempo, Suspend, Demand CS. These are that type 2. They tend to also last longer and linger more in the environment. Now, the difference between what we call residual, as pest control technicians, the people in environmental studies call it persistence in the environment. They don't want that persistence. They don't want it to last 6 months. They also, depending on the soil and the water that you have, depending on how much organic matter, you're going to have one or more degradates of that same product, which degrade in the soil and become a different component. And that other component could also be just as toxic to fish, to groundwater, to other non-target insects or non-target pests, including animals, that could potentially be contaminated by that degradate, even though it's no longer killing an insect, because the active ingredient half-life, the first half-life, the second half-life, third, fourth, and fifth half-life of that product, until it becomes totally something different, it can still cause damage. And so what you also have, you'll find that there's also different classifications in the EPA on categories of how these products are based on how long they last, and the LD50. So you want to do some research on that to get more. But in the case of pyrethroids, you have those two types. And what happens is sometimes they work a little differently. In the case, let's say, of the type 1 pyrethroid, the poisoning or syndrome is syndrome. I believe it's pronounced syndrome. It's TSYNDROME. In the cyano cypermethrin, the syndrome is known as CS syndrome, i.e., where we get the CS in all these products. So you have two different ways that it kills it. And an interesting thing is in certain products like Zenprox, which is a type 2, and then permethrin, which is a type 1. What most people figure out, if you mix these two together, it's kind of like, does it make it stronger? No, is that you have one mode of action with two different ways that it kills it. And so therefore you have a better control sometimes. With ticks, what I used to do is we would spray it with Telstar or bifenthrin, and then I would add the deltamethrin granules, DeltaGuard. And we found we got superior control with DeltaGuard because we got that granular with the 30 days, which we're not going to get from a liquid. Down here with the rain in the middle of summer, 80 inches of rain in a season, we found that we did that, and we got very, very good control of ticks and fleas in the garden. So that's just one thing that you can do, is you can mix two different types at lower rates to get the same mode of action. It's going to kill it the same way. It's going to rush the system with sodium. But you can get the way it actually, the poisoning of the insect in two different, I don't want to call them modes because then I'll get you confused. Just two different ways. And I think that works to do it that way. Then the next class that we're going to be talking about is the neonicotinoids. A lot of controversy around neonicotinoids, but most of it has to do with spraying of crops and large areas and trees. I am not a fan. I've never been a fan of spraying neonics because of the way they work. Other than a product like TriStar, which really translocates across the branches, it really behaves on shrubs the same way that contact and pyrethroid insecticides behaved. You don't get a bigger residual. And most people thinking, well, if I use it on a foliar spray, it's a systemic, it will get inside the plant. Not necessarily. You won't get that with imidacloprid. With products like dinotefuran, which is Safari, you can do a bark spray instead of a drench or an injection. And you can do bark sprays on some trees and then get the systemic action through the bark. It is approved for that. But as a foliar spray, I don't see the benefit of spraying a product that is controversial because of bees. It is easily transported, especially flowering plants. I'm not a fan of spraying flowering plants, never have been, because of all that. There are ways you can get control of that insect without necessarily, and a lot of people have, every pest, every insect, is potentially beneficial. So what's the deal about killing, the insect? You're killing a roach in its environment. A roach is beneficial. Yes. But when it's in your house, it's disgusting and it transmits diseases. You're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater on that one. I think if you can not contaminate beneficials and find another method like systemic treatments, drenching or root injection or trunk injections, much better on the environment in that case than just spraying everything. And so it's just my 2 cents on that one. But when it comes to doing perimeter treatment, neonics are very limited indoor uses to crack and crevice. All neonics, I don't think there's one that has a baseboard application. Some are just really limited to crack and crevice. But in the case, let's say, of acetamiprid, you have 4 to choose from right now, which is really good. 4 different neonics that you can use. And acetamiprid is the one in transport. Now, transport also uses bifenthrin. But because it doesn't have that cyanose, just like permethrin, it can be used for termites, and it's not repellent for termites. So, people always say, well, if it's a pyrethroid, why is it used in a non-repellent product? And they claim it's non-repellent. Remember, it belongs to that one category which doesn't have it. And in this case, it's not it's non-repellent. But, you got limited uses for it. You can use it around the exterior perimeter. With a product like Alpine dinotefuran, it's limited to spot, outdoor, crack and crevice. And what is a spot? Well, a spot is a technical term by the EPA that's actually very specific, limited to a 2x2 area, or I think 144 inches. So you can't just do a spot, and skip 2 feet and do 2x2 and then skip 2 feet and do 2x2, or, spray the baseboard for 144 inches continuously and then stop. And, where do you draw the line? Well, the limit is on about 20% of the total surface area that's allowed to be treated. So you got to, kind of figure out that it's very limited. So, you can do a spot like behind the refrigerator, 2x2 area, or a spot behind the stove, and a spot behind the dishwasher, and, where nobody's going to touch it. You can do a spot there and then CC the crack and crevice, the entire area around the house. So you can do that. And outside, it's limited to the same thing, spot and crack and crevice. But because it's non-repellent, because it allows it to be transported back, it doesn't damage the pheromone trail. And that's what the issue with non-repellents is it doesn't damage that pheromone trail where they stop walking across the way they were crossing before. And it allows them enough time. They're very slow acting to allow them enough time to transport it back and share that with the rest of the bunch. and, laminar transfer or horizontal transfer. I'm sorry, with that. So that's the way they work. Another product that you can use is imidacloprid, which can be used as a perimeter spray, Dominion 2L. That would be imidacloprid or Merit. Most people know it. It's now available in 100 formulations, generics. The other one is thianoxazam, succotash, but it's OptiGuard Flex. And you can use that for exterior perimeter. You can also be used for drenching plants and things like that to control aphids. Because of the way it works, it's non-repellent. If you apply it to the honeydew, basically it contaminates that entire honeydew and it turns it into an actual bait. That's the way it controls it really on plants, to control honeydew production. It just lets it contaminate everything. But in most cases, if you do not have an L&O license, or you don't have a lawn and ornamental license or certification or approval, you're limited to the base area where the mulch is and the shrub. You cannot put it on the shrubs, because then you're doing lawn and ornamental pest control. And if you don't have that designation, that's a problem. Most people don't understand that it's approved for it. But if you have a GHP designation, in the state of Florida does not allow you to spray shrubs if you do not have. You can spray around them. You can spray the base, but not the actual shrub. So that is, and the way neonics work, neonics, by binding the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the insect, it's mostly a blocker. Okay, so then it then allows to be it induces paralysis in the nervous system by binding to that. So that's the way it kills the insect. It's a different mode. It kills it in a different way than using sodium or using GABA or using something else. So it uses one particular thing in the insect's, body, in their system, to get that control. And now the last one that we're talking about would be a class 22, a voltage-dependent sodium channel blocker, indoxacarb, the active ingredient in Aralon. And indoxacarb can be used indoor for spot and crack and crevice, but outside it's got a very generous label. It allows you to do up to 3 feet up the wall and 7 feet out to get you a 10-foot perimeter. So very, very versatile outside, indoors, awesome for ants, awesome for roaches. For crack and crevice, you don't have to do baseboard treatments to get control of these insects. So the way it works is by blocking the sodium channel from preventing sodium from rushing in. Therefore, it's a lot slower product. It is very slow in working. You apply it and people are expecting this massive kill the next day and it's not there. But then you notice the roaches aren't there after a while. And it does take a while to get them to take that back, and, to the area where they're living and things like that with the insects. But it does work very well. So now you got 4 different modes of action with 4 different ways it kills the insect to avoid resistance. And you can rotate these products very easily. Labels are not very limiting. So that, you like I said, these are the pitfalls that you have to look. Read that label very carefully, especially in food service areas, because you're very limited to all these products to crack and crevice, to most of these, except for some of the pyrethrum that you can still spray. And, in areas, but in any case, in food and service areas, I don't care what the label says. I'm cracking crevicing. There's no way I'm putting out unless, you're doing a mop treatment with a borate product, or you're treating drains or things like that, with actual active ingredients, like these. We're going with crack and crevice, and very, very, very effective, at doing that. A lot of the new sprayers, like B&G and the Aero Mist, you got the attachment to do crack and crevice with a can. So now you can do a pin stream, or you can do a crack and crevice in an entire facility without having to spray it. I know that outside different areas of the country, you got an issue with scorpions, a crack and crevice isn't going to cut it. To try to prevent them unless you're doing really good sealing or something else. But there are ways to reduce pesticide exposure for you and the people that you're serving, and getting the resistance and getting better control with better products. I mean, if you're just saying, I'm going to buy the cheapest product, you can still spray permethrin SFR very cheaply, and things like that. I mean, sign off is still wonderful to apply, if you can tolerate the smell. People who spray their yard and using LNO, malathion, wonderful if if your neighbors, don't care if everything smells, and if you're wanting to hang around organophosphates all the time. Those things are available, and you can still use them very cheaply. They're 50-year-old chemicals, that you can buy very cheaply. So that's one of those. But if you're wanting to do a really good job for your clients and wanting to use, reduced risk products and use them in a way that reduces your exposure to them, this is a great way to do it. Guys, thank you so much for listening every week, for following us, and for all that you do. We're really, really excited about where this is going. We've had some very, very exciting calls in the last couple of weeks of people wanting to join us. And I'm so thankful. I'm really thankful this year for the way this is going. The audience is growing every single week. And we thank you for listening. Guys, until next time, you have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.